Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for this episode, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you are listening to us on. Thank you guys so much for the support. Thanks for the kind messages. Thanks for sharing this around. And just thank you in general for all the discussion that you guys leave on our social media and sharing posts and all that. It's been great and always a lot of fun to kind of see that and see this show continue to grow. Now, this episode is a topic I've touched on in previous episodes way back when I first started this podcast, and I think that it's really fun to spend time to highlight our smaller schools and perhaps our schools that may not get a lot of recognition just because of their population, but are still doing really awesome things, still having great programs, and still seeing success both on and off the court. So I know that some of you listening are at smaller programs or looking to potentially get that first or next head coaching job, and that might be at a smaller school. And some of you I know may have had previous experiences working at smaller schools, and this might be a kind of reflection or a little bit of nostalgia for you to kind of think back on that as we get through today's episode here. So our topic is going to kind of be about small schools being successful on the court, off the court. And we'll talk to our guest about what it is that they do to make the most of every single person they got at their school to both see success when they're playing and also away from the court as well. So I'm joined today by Coach Bradley Sutphin, who's the coach at Narrows High School. Coach, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm well, Coach. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Coach, let's go ahead and get started with you. What about your journey with the game, with coaching? What is the steps that kind of got you to where you're at right now at Narrows?
Absolutely. So this is my it's my 16th year overall teaching, and it's going to be my 14th year coaching basketball. I also coach football. I've coached football for 10 or 11 years, and coached with some great guys there. And then in basketball wise, I've coached girls I'm trying to go back through and look at how many years I've coached girls. So out of the 13 years or the 14 years I've coached boys, I coached boys my first 3 years. I did JV boys basketball my first 3 years of coaching and learned a lot. And then I have been a head coach. I was a head coach at 4 years for Georgia High School in Wytheville, Virginia. I was an assistant coach my first year at Pulaski County High School, and then my second year there, I didn't coach basketball. My wife and I were in the middle of moving to her hometown, which is actually where I'm at now, but I drove back and forth, which is about a 30-minute drive. And the last 4 years I was over there, I was the head girls coach. And then right when COVID hit, like right after COVID hit, I made the move over here to Narrows High School, where I'm at now, and I've been there the last 3 years. And really have enjoyed my time trying to build something special with some great kids and a great community. And that's kind of who I am. I guess, accomplishment wise, if you want to talk about that, when I was at Pulaski in 2019, we were state runner up. Took a bunch of kids that were freshmen and sophomores and a handful of juniors and a couple of seniors, and went on an impressive run and got to the state championship and
Awesome.
ran up against a team that was just physically and fundamentally just better than we were. No bones about it. And we got our butts kicked in it, but had a unbelievable time. Kind of really solidified some things that my thought process on some coaching philosophies that we had changed and some things there, and really got some results out of that and kind of shaped the way I coach going forward. And then the year after that, so the year that COVID hit, which was 2020, we were state quarterfinalists. We were our Region D champions. We we were undefeated in our district, which in our district that I was at in Pulaski was like one of the tougher girls districts in the state of Virginia. I feel like in 4A, and we were 12-0 in the regular season, beat some really good teams. And then, obviously with the victors go the spoils, I was fortunate enough to win coach of the year in our district and then region coach
awesome.
of the years. So, but it's like I tell people all the time, those awards don't happen if you don't have great kids. And there's a lot of coaches that'll agree the same thing.
Yep.
But that's kind of my journey up to now.
Awesome, Coach. And I know we just talked about it a little bit off the air, but for our listeners here, give us kind of the lay of the land of Narrows High School, kind of the demographics, where you guys are at, and kind of the population you got going on over there.
Absolutely. So we are a small town located pretty much on the New River. New River runs right through the middle of town, pretty much. And there's about 2,000, a little over 2,000 people in our town. Our high school is a small high school. We have just under 300 kids, 8th grade through 12th grade. And, like I told you off the air, it's just an amazing community. It's a tight-knit community. It's one of those communities where, at the drop of a hat, you're going to have people to help you out. You're going to have people to, be there and support you. And we have a tremendous sense of, like our community calls green wave pride. And our community and our kids and our school, they really buy into that, and they really embrace the small school and the love for each other. And it's just an amazing place to be a part of. So the little backstory even more is, my wife is from Narrows. So her whole family's from here. The gym we play in is actually named after her grandfather.
Oh, wow.
So there's a little bit of I guess a staple in the community here. And, when we moved over here after my first year at Pulaski as an assistant, we moved over here and we've been over here ever since, but I've always been envious of their pride and how much, they get behind their kids here. And just how much the kids are just wonderful kids. And that's not saying anywhere else I was at before our kids weren't good kids.
Of course,
I've
yeah.
always had great kids wherever I've been. But it's just a little different. And there's a lot of people that they're at small schools, they could probably attest to what I'm saying. That it's just it's a whole different sense of belonging when you're in places like that.
And I think that's one of just the unique, just the advantages or opportunities that come with being at such a small school. In my experience, talking to coaches who have been at them, and I'm sure you can attest to that, is that you get a community feel. You get this sense of, everybody kind of rallies around the school that you might not necessarily get at a larger, bigger campus.
Absolutely. I remember I was still at my old school when the volleyball team over here went to the state championship, and like it was a running joke. Last one out of town, cut the lights off. It was literally like that. Like I remember it. Vividly that, and I wasn't even a part of it. I was just living over here. My kids were in school over here. My wife was teaching over here, but that's basically what it was. It was like last one out, turn the lights off. And and I've had that at other places. The school that I was at, George, with my first head coaching job, I was also a football coach, and we were fortunate enough to win a state championship. And I remember, and I told a couple kids that day, when they opened the doors at the football stadium, I was like, take it in. I was like, because this is something you're never going to forget, that your whole community's here to support you. And when they open up the door and the whole home side of the football stadium's in nothing but maroon, and they're cheering for you, like, that sense of community is just something that, at small places like that, it's unbelievable when they rally behind you. And it's just it's an unbelievable experience, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, that's great. As we all know, if you're working at a small school and with a smaller population, there are going to be some unique, some may call them disadvantages, some may call them just challenges that have to be overcome. So I was just curious, in your experiences, what have been some of the maybe challenges that kind of come with having such a small school that you've kind of experienced? And then also, of course, how have you kind of worked to kind of overcome them, or maybe try and take those, disadvantages and kind of flip them on their head and make them advantages for you?
Absolutely. So that, I mean, that is something, here we share, with less than 300 kids in our school, we share athletes in every sport we have.
Yeah.
So I share, like, on my team right now, on our team right now, um, we have 13 kids, and I'm wanting to say out of the 13, I'd have to look at my roster. At least 8 of them played volleyball. And in our whole program, there may be 5 kids, middle school JV and varsity kids, that don't play volleyball. And it's not one of those things that, I don't encourage. The volleyball coach and we have a great working relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We run the weight room in the summer for the girls, all girls, all girls sports. And it is, sometimes it's a disadvantage. You get a little selfish at times, but then, you have to remind yourself, like, for us to be successful, this is what has to happen. If our volleyball coach only wants volleyball kids, it's going to be a struggle for me, because I'm going to lose a lot of good athletes, or vice versa.
Yep.
She's going to lose a lot of, and I don't want to do that to kids, because I was a kid that played all three. I played 3 sports in high school. I was football, basketball, and baseball, and nowadays, in the mentality of you have to specialize and stuff like that, like, it's just, we take it away from kids being a kid, and I think there's so much more they can learn, playing multiple sports. You learn how to deal with multiple people, and how to deal with different coaches, and you learn a lot of life lessons from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so our whole process is, and this is what we do as our basketball program. So we start in the weight room about May. We really pick it up in June and July. We go from 8 to 10. 8 to 10, 10:30. And then, so throughout June, we do pretty much all basketball. Like, so all the girls that play basketball, we're in the gym, we're doing basketball workouts, or we're going to team camps. And then in July, we switch. And if you play volleyball, you do volleyball. And I'll take the handful that do basketball. And if they want to come in and work, they can come in and work. And same thing with the volleyball kids. We don't, the girls that play basketball and volleyball, we don't tell them to not come to basketball workouts, but we kind of switch our focuses, I guess, between the months, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference. Like, the volleyball coach, and she's great to work with. Like I said, I get the whole month of June with my kids, and she does minimal volleyball stuff, and then we just basically switch it in July. And it's worked really good. The kids work really hard, when they come in, and it kind of helps, build that strong foundation for all of our girls' programs.
So with that being said, because you're sharing athletes, like you mentioned, with volleyball in particular, and so you might have that feeling sometimes, I think you mentioned, where you want them a little bit more, you wish you had more time with them to work on certain things. So I know that kind of creates a situation for you in particular, where you want to make sure that when you have your girls, that you are making the most out of the time that you have with them, because they are going to, go to their other sports in the off season and things like that. So I'm curious about what you emphasize, or what you do during those off season workouts, or what you're doing in the summer to kind of maximize the time that you have with them. Are there any certain, like, skills in particular you hammer in and focus on? What is kind of your points of emphasis during that off season time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we hammer a lot of fundamentals in our off-season workout, like things that, we hammer them probably a lot more, just because we have them in that shorter time frame.
Yep.
And we do a lot more specific things, like we really break down shooting technique, and talk about, with the flat platform, getting a good platform to shoot off of, keeping your other guide hand flat, not getting it turned. We really, really focus on breaking down some fundamental stuff. We try to do a lot of movement-based, like basketball movement-based workouts. So, whether it's 2-on-0s, 2-on-2s, 3-on-0s, 3-on-3s, whatever, and just kind of be intentional with, like, teaching movements, because, when you share a lot of that, we don't have a lot of kids that play basketball in the off season. That do a lot of the travel stuff, and that's fine. Like, that's not a big issue. But with that comes sometimes I don't want to say a lack, but your basketball IQ isn't as high as other people's can be. So we really try to focus on building that IQ in the off season. And really try, like I said, hammer the fundamentals. So that way, when we get in season, like we can hit the ground running a lot in practice, and not have to spend 30 minutes every day working on just the ball handling or passing fundamentals. So that's kind of how I guess we really focus our workouts in the off season.
And I forgot to ask this before. This was on my format, and I completely skipped this together. But I'm gonna skip this in here now, or slip this in here now. I know that you're a big man-to-man person as well, and so I'm sure that there's probably fundamental principles or things that you're instilling and working on when you are with your girls about man-to-man defense and making sure that the principles are in place there. So let me go back to that question about what is it that you work on, and what is it that you teach your players when you're implementing your man-to-man that you think they really need to know and that you really emphasize so that you guys can get the most out of your man-to-man?
Yeah, so a couple things, and this is actually something from Gino Auriemma, and I'm sure a lot of coaches have stolen this from him. But the one thing we talk about is energy and effort. We don't get beat at energy and effort. Like, and we don't coach energy and effort. Like, I tell our kids all the time, like, I can't coach your energy and I can't coach your effort. That's on you. That's something you have to bring every day. We rep defense every day in some shape or form. Other days we do it longer. Like, we'll break it down to wing deny or front cut deny, or we'll work on 2-on-2 rotation or 4 versus 3 help side rotation, and or we'll shell. Like yesterday, we didn't do so we had a shorter practice, so we didn't really break down defense. We did defensive cutthroat for 30 minutes, shell man-to-man cutthroat drill for 30 minutes, and really focused on intensity. We really talk about communication, which everybody talks about communication with man-to-man. But we talk about it. Some people talk about it, and it's an important factor to really emphasize it for us. And we talk about it's a non-negotiable in our program. If you can't play defense in our program, you're going to have a really hard time getting on the floor. And that's just part of it. And I always use the phrase, if you can score 20 and your man scores 20, you've canceled each other out. So we're playing 4-on-4 essentially, So it's just something we harp on. We really, we really emphasize it. In practice, I get really excited when we make a good defensive play. In games, I get really excited. And I think our kids feed off that. When you show that excitement about how much a man-to-man play, even if it's, rotating on a good rotation and then ball gets on the floor and you dive on the floor and get the ball back, like just being extra excited about that. I think our kids take pride in that. And they really have enjoyed that, or they really take it to heart when you get excited about it.
Oh yeah, the things that you get excited about as a coach, they're like, oh, okay, like I can this clearly shows this is a big deal. When coaches, jumping out of his chair and clapping and screaming and excited about it. Yeah, that's a good way to bring that energy.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll tell you what's funny about that question is, yes, I am a giant. I love man-to-man. Like, if we can play man-to-man all the time, I would. We've actually played more zone in our first 4 games here than we have in our previous 2 years. But it's a matchup zone. So we play a lot like Syracuse's 2-3 matchup zone. So there's a lot of man-to-man principles in it. But our kids, I don't know what it is, and it's not like we don't play man-to-man well. It's we've done a really good job of playing matchup zone and keeping people out of the paint and forcing people to shoot jump shots. And we're a little undersized compared to a lot of people we play. I don't think we don't have a kid. I think we've got a sophomore she's pushing 6 foot on a good day where she's stretched. But outside of that, man, I'm not blessed with 6 foot or higher across my lines or across our lines and things like that. So, we've been a little bit more zone here lately, but like I said, it's a matchup, and our kids have really thrived at it lately. And it's kind of hard at times when you're just really clamping on people to be like, all right, let's change it up and play man right here. But, and like today, the team we'll play today, they've got a 6'3" post player that's going to be a tough matchup for us. So, we'll probably be back and forth between man and zone, but any zones we play, we use matchup principle, or we use man principles.
Exactly. You can't play zone unless man, right?
Oh man, I'll tell you, I've watched teams play zone and they don't play with man principles, and you can just carve them to pieces. And when you play with man principles and you really, really focus on your man principles in your zones, it's essentially like we were talking about it today during walkthrough. It was like, when you got the ball in certain places, it's literally nothing more than shell drill is all it is. The way we're trying to play our zone, balls in the corner, you got somebody on the ball, somebody covering the post, somebody covering the wing, and then your other two people in your zone are slid to the help line. So and that's what we pointed out. Hey, look at you. You're in shell drill. If we throw the ball out to the corner, we're in shell drill right now. So and the kids understand that, and I think it's our focus on man to man every day really helps our zone work, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And I wanted to ask as a quick follow-up for that about communication. And I think that so many coaches are huge on communication and really emphasize on defense the ability to communicate. It's incredibly important, but I think most coaches and pretty much every coach I've talked to always talks about how their players don't communicate enough and they're not talking enough on defense. So what are there things that you emphasize, or things that you put in, or things that you've taught that have been used to kind of increase that level of communication on defense?
Yeah, so that's one thing, and we're the exact same way. Like, when I talk about communication, don't think you're going to come in our gym and practice and we're going to be as loud in the whole gym as anything, and you can't hear anything because we're talking. Like, we don't do that like all the time. I wish we would do a better job at it sometimes. But so like yesterday in Cutthroat, one of our things was, if you don't communicate on defense, you get kicked off the defense and the offense comes on defense, if you know how Cutthroat works.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there were several times, like as soon as the play started, I hit the whistle and was like, all right, you're off, no communication. And they kind of start seeing it in their minds and start understanding, okay, this is what he really means. And that's what I told them. Like, I don't need you screaming and loud. Like, I just need you to communicate to each other. Like, if there's a screen coming, or if there's somebody in the high post, or if there's somebody, you just got to be able to create or communicate with each other. Like, nothing makes me more mad than watch us get hammered on a ball screen. And I'm like, that's laziness out of you running up there. Like, and we teach hedge the ball screen. So we teach for, we want to match the high side foot with our inside foot and really push the guard up the floor on the pick and roll so we can, get out there. And when we get a guard hammered on a ball screen, I will lose my stuff, because it's like, man, if you've never been hit with a ball screen not knowing it's coming, it rattles you. And it rattles you. And that's what we talk to our kids about. And that's what I tell our post, or tell anybody. I'm like, if you go up there and set a ball screen and you don't yell it out, we get rattled. I was like, next time I'm going to have somebody just rattle you on a screen real hard, because it's not fun. We try to put an emphasis. Like, I try to teach and practice a lot more than I scream and yell. Now the girls will probably disagree with that. But like, I try to use teaching points, and when we talk about, like, I'll blow the whistle and stop, and I'll be like, listen, like, you're not communicating at all. I got one person communicating, do better, or we're going to fix it ourselves. Like, we're just going to, run, or we'll figure out something to do that you hate to do. And, and really emphasize that. And it's just something we harp on every day. And I've got assistants that they're standing on the baseline or they're wherever on the floor talking about communicate. There's just things like that. We're just trying to be really intentional with our communication.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a point of emphasis that you're always, you can't let up on it. I think it's one of those things that it's got to be, if you really want to be a good defensive communicating team. And I agree with you, our girls aren't perfect by any means at all, but I think if it's something that you continually emphasize and bring up every single practice and every single day, you'll see the success. And if you let off on it, I think if I let off on it, one day in practice, all of a sudden that communication, I don't know about you, coach, it would just drop. So
absolutely. The minute you don't emphasize it or talk about it, it stops. And it's not a they don't want to thing. It's just there's so many things going on that communicating is the last thing they're thinking about sometimes. And then that's the thing, is getting their brains and their mouths to work. We all, and every coach that has ever coached basketball has probably made the statement, if we're sitting there shooting around or whatever, we will laugh and joke and talk and talk with each other. And then as soon as you get into defensive shell drill, we stop talking. And I'm sure every coach has experienced that at some point. And that's one thing we talk about. I'm like, if I let you guys just stand here and shoot, I was like, you will not stop talking. I was like, but the minute I put you in shell drill, you just go mute. I was like, we just can't have it. And like you said, it's just something that you got to emphasize every day. And you expect it. Like you emphasize it every day, and you expect it, and your kids will, they'll start picking up on that.
Yep, absolutely. Going back to the topic at hand here, I want to ask about kind of the program building aspect of things and how you kind of build excitement with your program and kind of what gets your girls kind of excited, amped up, and really like fired up for ready to play the game and just in general bringing the excitement to your program. What kind of goes into that?
So I'll be honest with you, and I know a lot of coaches are like this, and what we do is nothing different. I'm sure there's 100 other programs that are similar to what we do and everything like that, but our program is 100% about our kids. Like we make it an emphasis. It is about our kids. Like I don't use me. I don't use my. I don't use I. When I talk about ours, if I do, it's a total mistake because it is not about me at all. And like I said earlier, I don't have 2 Coach of the Year awards unless I don't have great kids those years. And that's what I tell our kids. Like, this is your program. Take ownership in your program. Like, be excited for your program. This is yours. Like, it's not mine. I'm just here to keep everybody steered in the right direction. And like we use social media a lot. My old assistant did an outstanding job of really pushing social media, so I've had to really take that on and learning how to use social media and just letting your kids know that like you love them and it's 100% about them. Like when you do that and they know how much you care and they know how much you're trying to make your program mean to people, they take pride in that, and I'll share a story with you right now. Like I said, we've had some internal struggles. After our game the other night that we won, I wasn't very happy with. We won and we beat a county rival, which is a big game for us. But I wasn't really happy with. I didn't think we played very well, and I wanted them to learn how to hold themselves to a higher standard. And after like I said, we had some internal struggles. So I took away their practice uniforms. I took away their they just got new sweatshirts, like their new gear. I took their gear back from them and I kicked them out of their team room. And I told them, I was like, this is a pride thing. This is a program that, we're trying to build something special here. And you've got to take pride in that. And when you don't fulfill those expectations, like there's punishment for that. And to me, there's a lot of people out there that'll put people on the line and just run them to get their point across. To me, I've learned that when you start taking things away, like it means a lot more and you get a better response. So like yesterday they came to practice and they were in their own practice gear. Like they had to bring their own shorts and a t-shirt. And I got with the football coach and he gave me some football pennies that were huge. And that's what we used as practice jerseys. Because I want them to understand the pride that comes with putting that in on your chest in our program. There's a lot of people in this community that back you up, that don't know you, and they back you because of what you wear or where you go to school. And, and when you don't fulfill that, like that's a representation. Number one, it's a representation of me, and I've failed at some point as the head of the program. So, it's just trying to be really intentional with, what we want in our program and the excitement we're trying to create for them. It's like I tell them, I was like, we're girls basketball. Everybody talks about, it's girls basketball. Like, I don't believe that. Like, you're important. I spend my time with you. Like, I spend my time with you. I spend more time with you than I do my own family. Like, I want you to take pride in what we're doing here. And it's really good. Like I said, they all went to team breakfast today, which is awesome. And I told them, I was like, that's part of, getting over yourselves and loving each other. And when you do things like that, special things happen. I've seen it. We were state runner up one year, and at midseason, we had to have one of those, locked the door in the rooms, and a lot of tears and a lot of emotions and a lot of things were talked about, and it fixed us. And, and that's what I told our girls, like, you have to be intentional with, wanting to be around each other and wanting to have success together. I was like, because these same people are going through the same struggle every day that you're going through. They're coming to practice every day. They're putting aside what's going on in their life for 2 hours to come get better and all work towards the same goal. And it's, and we treat our kids well. Like we do some fundraising and stuff like that, but like we take care of our kids. Like I want our kids when they leave here to think, man, like we were really taken care of in high school. I'm really big on when we do have the locker room, I set those jerseys out. Like I make it look nice. And I take pride in the presentation of wanting them to understand that, like, this is something to be excited about. And it's really good. Like it's great. And we talk about our young kids. We get our young kids involved, and we've, before I got here, it was all kind of separate, and now we're all one together. So like we just ordered, sweatshirts for everybody in our program. Our older kids, our JV and our varsity kids, they'll actually get a different. They'll get a separate, like a crew neck and a hoodie. But all of our kids, from our seniors to our seventh graders, all get the same hoodie, because we're all the same people. Like we're all in the same program, like those kids. And that's what I tell our older kids, like, you set an example for those younger kids, because they're going to be you one day. They're watching you, they're going to be you. And we're starting to get some things in the right direction. We had a couple eighth graders come up, and the excitement when they were approached about coming up was just, it was like, that's what told me we were turning a corner and building some excitement, because there was a couple of them that we were talking about. And I said, hey, we're going to come up. You guys are going to come up after you're done with middle school. I can't promise you'll play, but, it's an opportunity to practice and get better. And one girl, before I could even finish, was like, I'm coming. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I was like, that. And that's what that's what we want. That's the excitement that we want. Like we want kids to be excited for our program. And that's kind of how we do it. We're kind of, I guess, a little bit more intentional about creating excitement.
And I think that it's such, whether you're in a small school or even a larger school, I think that there is a huge need to be really intentional. And I think and use that word, which I think is great, that intentional about building that excitement, because I'm sure, as you know, and those listening know, girls basketball is kind of struggling right now with numbers and with participation.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like there's been a kind of a national decline in girls basketball. I've seen a lot of lower level programs be canceled, or a lot of teams not be able to have lower level programs. And I think that we really got to, as a girls basketball coach myself, we really got to be intentional with making the sport exciting and making it fun for them, and making, being a part of something really meaningful to them, because we got to get those numbers up for girls basketball. That's for sure.
Oh man. And we're seeing it here where we're at. Like there's a team that won a state championship a few years ago, and as a very prominent program around here. They don't even have a varsity program this year.
Oh, wow.
And,
really?
And yeah, they didn't even have a varsity program. There's two teams in our district that didn't have varsity programs. They got JV programs, but they don't have varsity. There's a couple programs that we play that don't have JV teams. Like it's a serious decline, and it's an issue like that needs to be fixed. And that's kind of that's what I told somebody. I was like, people don't really understand the magnitude, and it's in any sport. It's not just basketball, but it's girls basketball right now here where we're at. It can be devastating if you don't have a lower group. If you don't have a JV group, like you look at a lot of kids now, and you think back on what they missed through COVID. If you don't have a year of middle school or JV basketball, that's the same as not like the COVID year when you missed everything. And it can be devastating if you're not careful, and it's hard to come back from, because a lot of the times those kids aren't doing it outside of what you're doing. So if they miss a year and they're not playing travel or anything like that, like that's a year that they don't get back, and they miss a big year of fundamentals and everything.
Yep. Yeah. It's just definitely a good reminder for us, especially on the girls basketball side, for sure, to just build that excitement. I think one of the things that it sounds like has been really meaningful to you, and I'll certainly let you talk about as well, is really kind of streamlining things where that excitement, right, and that investment in your program. It looks like there's been a lot of investment you and your staff have made on the lower levels and really bringing them in so that they're ready to kind of join in and ready to be a part of the culture right away.
Oh, absolutely. And that, I've learned that from some, I'm in I mentioned it to you, like I'm in a group chat with some great coaches. Like there's like, and we've had 2 or 3 different threads at times where people have retired and got out, but like we got together during COVID, and a guy that I used to coach against when I was at Pulaski, like started it up. He went to Georgia. So like we're in a group chat with a handful of coaches out of Georgia, a couple coaches in Texas. I mean, a couple coaches in Virginia, and a lot of the majority of them are girls coaches. There's one boys coach in there. I'm pretty sure there may be 2 or 3 boys coaches in there now. But it's like we all just bounce ideas off of each other, and that's kind of where I got a lot of our stuff, like my thought process from in being intentional with the younger groups, because they are your future. You've got your kids now, and they're going to be there because they've been there. But like, where you don't want to lose those kids from like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th up until 10th grade year, because if you lose 2 kids each year, your numbers are going to really, really decline if you're not careful. Like for us, especially, like we're not blessed with, I talk to some people and they've got 40 kids coming for tryouts. Like I barely got 40 kids in my whole program, and they've got 40 kids trying out for a varsity team or whatever. And it's not like boys, you have a boys tryout, boys are going to try out. Like you're going to have enough to pick from for the most part. But, it's, you have to make sure those younger kids know who you are. And that was the one thing, like we had, in the spring, the last 2 years, we've done, like kind of clinics, weekly clinics. So we do 2 nights a week, and we had older kids coming, but they were all in spring sports. So they were in track or tennis or whatever. So they weren't there a lot of the times. So I really focused on getting the young kids, and it was like 2nd grade. I can't remember. We may have did 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grades, and 8th grades. I know we did 8th grade. Really focused on those grades right there to build that excitement with those kids. We got them T-shirts, and we were 2 nights a week, and it was a free clinic. Like I think we charged them $20 to start just to get a T-shirt, and that was literally what it was. It was $20 to get a T-shirt. And it kind of helped us so we don't go broke, obviously, because everybody raises their own money and we're not blessed with it, obviously. But it was getting those kids in our gear, like something with an N on it, something in our school colors, so they start feeling that sense of pride of what we're trying to do here and what we're wanting to build out of our program. And I think that's something you have to do. I think it's a non-negotiable for you as a coach. And if you're not doing that, like it's gonna be a struggle for you because kids aren't gonna know who you are.
Yeah. And you don't want to be in a situation where that you have new people who are coming in as freshmen, and it's like you've never met them before and you don't know them anymore, or you don't know who they are, and they come in the gym. Absolutely. And it's like, oh man, you feel like you're already way behind because you're at that point, right? You're like evaluating who they are, you're scrambling trying to figure out their skill set, whereas if you already know who they are, like you already kind of probably have thought what their place is going to be and kind of where they're going to already for you.
Absolutely. And that was kind of the thing. So we had our 8th graders come. They finished up their season last week on Tuesday. I think this past week on Tuesday. So their first day for a handful of them was Wednesday, and they were all nervous, and that's what they were talking about. And, and when we did our pre-practice meeting and all, that was what we talked about, was like, make them feel welcome. So I said it to the older kids and the kids that were already there, like, make them feel welcome. Like they're where they are who you were. Some of you last year, some of you 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, that's you. And you remember how like intimidating that was to come to practice with, the head coach, and I grew up in an era where your head coach like carried that mystique. Like that was the head coach, and I'm sure you did too. Mm-hmm. Like your head coach carried some reverence with them, and like, they were a big person in the community, and like it was intimidating to be around them sometimes. And when they talked to you or spoke to you, like it was like the president talking.
Wow, they're talking to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow, they're talking to me. And and I try to break that ice up front because I don't want them to feel like that, because they're a part of our program now. And I tell them, like, I'm loud, I'm very loud. I worked in the gym. I taught PE for 14 or 13 of my 14 year or 16 years. So I'm used to having to yell and carry my voice across the gym. I was like, don't think it is me yelling at you or, anything like that. I was like, it's just who I am. They start falling in and they start understanding that, we expect certain things. And with those expectations come, when you don't do those things, I'm going to let you know about it. And if, I may let you know in a way that is going to seem like I'm scolding you, but it's the same, old saying, listen to the message, not the tone of the message. You know what I'm saying? So there's a message there, not the tone half the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when that kind of goes back to the point that we just talked about. I think if your players that are incoming, they already kind of know that about you, right? They already kind of have that understanding of who you're like and what your personality is like. It's like, oh, they already know, when you're, say something loudly to them, it's not like terrifying to them the first time. It might still be a little terrifying to them, but at least they know, like, oh no, I've heard him speak before on his girls. That's just how coach talks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try, I try not to yell. I talk loudly. I don't hear very well either. So I talk very loud, but I tell my kids, like, I want you to know when you've reached that threshold for me that I'm mad. They're starting to learn. They've learned that. The older kids know it. Like, they know, and you can hear them in practice, start holding each other accountable a little bit with, if something's not going well or mental focus is not there, you'll start hearing them, come on, we got to lock in, we got to focus. Then that's where you show that what you're preaching and what you're talking about is starting to rub off on them. And it just kind of flows throughout the program. Like, they start understanding, but when I get mad and I raise my voice, that I'm to the point that I'm done looking at that. Like, I'm done watching you make the same mistake, or you make a mistake that we've talked about, or something we've worked on. Like, that's I don't know if you're a Smokey and the Bandit fan, but like Buford T. Justice used to say, that's an attention getter. Like, I want to do something that gets your attention, and you understand, like, oh wow, okay, this is what we've got to lock in and do.
It's so funny because with me, it's like the exact opposite, where if I'm mad or I'm like upset, like I get really quiet. And I get really almost like, and then they know that, like, he's quiet right now. Like, that's not good. And I'm like, that's kind of saves my voice a little bit too. It's like, if I'm really loud and I'm really amped up and I'm almost like yelling, like, it's okay. If I get quiet though, then it's like, I'm not even talking right now. Like, I'm just biting my tongue at the moment. Then like, now we got to fix something. So yeah, I think as long as your girls or guys can pick up on it and they know when it's like, this is he's not in a good mood now, and they can correct that. But I think the big key, right, is the correction. Like, once they can make that correction and recognize it, it's like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of like, I want to correct it. Like, I don't want to just scream at it and leave it. Like, I want to get my point across, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to correct what our mistake was, or what we're doing wrong there, and why and I try to give an explanation of why, because kids nowadays want to know why, and it's not disrespect. It's today's kids, like, they want to know why are they doing that. Like, anything else they do, they know why, and when you're in practice, if you're not telling them why, you're going to struggle, because they're just going to think, oh, well, he's just yelling, or they're just yelling. They don't know what, it's not, they don't know what they're doing. It's, they just turn you off after a while.
100%. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to give you some time to talk about building a great culture off the court, and what are some of the things that you and your staff do to kind of create that, really awesome basketball experience for your girls that goes beyond just what happens on the court.
Yeah, so we and my assistant, my JV coach now, she's we're going to try to do some community service projects. One thing that I've done at my last two schools, after every game, our home games, our girls go out and they clean the bleachers. Like, they go out and pick up trash out of the bleachers. And, a lot of people probably, wonder why we make them do that. But for me, it's getting them to understand that you're never above picking up trash, and our schools are staffed by janitors who don't make money like teachers do, who work their tails off to keep our schools looking clean, the least we can do is help them out and make their job a little bit easier. Our janitors that we have at our school are great. They do a good job keeping our school clean. And I want them to understand that, like I said, you're never above picking up trash. Like, it's never above you to pick up trash. And the minute you think that, like, you need to refocus your mindset, because, if and I like another quote I heard, it costs nothing to be nice. And that's what we talk about. Like, it costs nothing to be nice to each other. And I gave the girls a talk today. Like, one thing we talked about is, like, enjoy each other, love each other, be around each other, because these are memories that you chase after you're out of high school. You don't get those memories back. Like, you don't get to be around those people anymore. And you don't get to have those times where you go through that with people and this and that. And, we really focus on doing the right things in our program. I tell the kids every year, like, your behavior in schools is an expectation. It's really not an expectation. It's a must.
Sure.
Because we all know as teachers, if you get an email from a teacher, another teacher, about one of your players, it's never so-and-so. It's always your basketball player. And I get that. Like, teachers want coaches to handle it. And I love the fact that teachers email me if my kids have issues, because I go straight to those kids. And I talk to them and I say, hey, look, like, that's just not how we do things here. And, like I said, we've got great kids too. Like, I have minimal issues or anything like that, but they're still at times kids, it's just, just harping on that all the time. And like I said, doing community service projects. And I told our kids, I always, like we said, we clean up after the games, but I told them, I was like, if you start paying attention, if you haven't noticed, when you go out there, half the stuff's already picked up. I was like, because number one, your parents are seeing that. There's community members seeing that, and they're helping you now. I was like, if you want change, you got to be the change. And, they're starting to see that, and they take pride in it. Like, so yesterday our boys played. Like, I said, we have this tournament. It's a boys and girls tournament.
Yep.
So we played Thursday, the boys played last night, and then we all play today. But, our girls, I looked up last night after the game, and our girls were picking up trash out of the bleachers and filling up the trash cans that were in the bleachers and helping clean up. And, like, as a coach, like, that hits you. Like, when you know that, when you look and see, and you don't ask. Like, I didn't ask. I didn't expect them to do it after a boys game, because, I tell them that's after the girls games, and we don't, we clean up the big stuff and this and that. And, to see them start picking up trash, like, that lets you know that, like, hey, they get it. They're understanding it. And it's all of them. It's not one or two of them. It's all of them going through the bleachers and picking up stuff.
Yeah, and it's something that they've internalized, but they actually believe in, to the point where they'll do it even if, like, no one's watching them. Like, that's just
Absolutely.
what they do, right? And that sticks with them forever.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, we don't seek attention for it. Like, I don't, as the leader of the program, like, I don't say, look at us, look at us. This is what we're doing. Like, that's what I tell them. Like, it's a humility thing, and we want to be humble, and we want to, just do things for others and do nice things for other people, and, and take care of our school and take pride in our school.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Coach, what would you say to maybe a new coach, or maybe somebody who's looking to make a coaching change, and they have an option to maybe go at a small school environment? Maybe they're a little bit hesitant, or they're a little bit unsure, kind of on the fence about it. What would you tell somebody who might be in that sort of situation?
Get involved in the community. Get the community with you. Get your kids seen in the community. And jump into the fact of that small school. Like, if there's traditions, embrace those traditions. So we have a tradition, and I'll tell this funny story. So my first year here, we have our school has a tradition where we pull up, we make the right and go up the hill to our school, and the kids stand up on the bus and they sing the alma mater. And like I said, my wife's from here. I've married into this, this green wave pride, I guess you could say. Well, the first game we ever come back from, we didn't sing the school song, and it wasn't, and my mentality was like, we lost. We lost. I don't care. Like, we lost. I really didn't care about a song at that time. I was so mad I didn't care. And then, she was like, no. She was like, you sing the school song. She was like, she was like, you talk about non-negotiables. She's like, that's a non-negotiable. Is you sing the school song. So ever since then, we haven't missed a school song. I will say that. As we come up to school.
Only
So
to be
you
told
find,
once.
oh yeah, oh absolutely, absolutely. And one of the guys that helps me is he's a Narrows grad, and Byron is a Green Wave through and through too. He played for my wife's grandfather and talks about the pride, and when he speaks about Narrows, like you can feel the pride in his voice when he talks. And my JV coach Tara, she's the exact same way. They speak about pride, and my wife as well, and my brother-in-law who's the boys coach. Like he was a great player here, and just the pride that these people talk about their school and what it means to them, and this and that. Like you've got to embrace that. Like you've got to find out, because all small schools have something like that somewhere.
Right.
And you've got to embrace that, and you've got to emphasize that. And I think that's number one, is you got to figure out what is the heartbeat of that community, and then you got to go with that.
I think that kind of as like a point of emphasis to that, I think especially, and I'm not saying this isn't the case at larger schools or anything like that, but I think that if you are considering taking a position at a small school or at a small school environment, it's not just that you're taking a coaching position. It's like you're taking a community position. You're taking a position to be a part of that community, and it seems like it's really important that all those coaches are aware that, especially at a smaller school or at a smaller town, that you are going to be agreeing to being a part of something that's so much bigger than just a basketball or an athletic program necessarily.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not Bradley Sutphin, the business teacher at Narrows High School. I'm Bradley Sutphin, the girls basketball coach at Narrows High School. They and that's just the way it is. And it's the same thing with our football coach. The football coach in our community is a big figure. It's that's just how it is in those small communities. And you are a community member and you're a community leader. People are going to look to you, and your rec programs are going to look to you as the leader of that program for guidance, and your lower, your younger people and the people in your community want to see you doing good things to promote their community. And if you're not doing that, like, it's not going to be like, you're going to struggle. Like, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I like that point about, especially you're in a smaller community. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, huge city. So when you talk about like a girls basketball coach, you're talking about who knows how many people. But where you're at in these other smaller communities, it's like the girls basketball coach, right? Or like the football coach.
Yeah.
Like there's only referring to one person.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. And like I said, we're in a town of 2,000 people. It's not easy to know who people are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to know who people
are. Right.
Me.
Yeah. No, they know that's funny. Before
Absolutely.
we hit our concluding segment, I this made me think of one last question I thought of as a follow-up to that, which is what is the importance you find, particularly in the environment that you're in a smaller environment, of working with parents, talking with parents, being in good communication with parents? What do you find has been the kind of the keys to having those successful parent relationships?
So it's parents, and I don't want to call it dealing with parents. Like, I'm a parent myself. I understand I understand parent thought a lot of the times. We try to be very transparent. There's times that I could do a better job. And it's one of those things. It's not intentional. I'm already doing everything else. Like, as head coaches, we already have so much on our plate that sometimes things just get forgotten. But we try to be very transparent with our parents. And I listen with an open mind. If we have a parent meeting, this year we've talked about with our kids, and I've told our kids, like, if you have an issue, let's come talk about it. Like, you come talk to me about it first. And if mom and dad have an issue, let's let the child, or let's let the athlete come talk first and see if we can figure something out, because mom and dad aren't going to be there forever. When you get older in life, like, if you have an issue at work, you can't take mom and dad with you to work. Like, you've got to go, You've got to go have that adult conversation with people. And it's hard at times. It's hard as a coach when, a parent's mad because their kid's not playing. And it's not a purposeful thing. It's not a thing where I don't like your kid. At the end of the day, our job is to win games. At the end of the day, my job is to win games. It's to teach kids how to be successful and prepare for life and to win basketball games. And that, it's the same thing in life. We don't always get the exact same treatment, and like I said, I try to be as transparent with parents as possible. I used to do the whole, I'm like, I used to put up this whole wall. And I think at times, if you do that, you're going to get yourself not in trouble, but you're just going to run into issues a lot more. If we do talk to parents, I talk to them. I try to talk to them in a way that, like, I understand what they're saying because I'm a parent myself. But I guess as a coach and a parent, I guess sometimes I have a little bit different philosophy. Like, we're very adamant with my oldest son who's in the sports. Like, you're coached by who your coach is. Like, I don't coach you. Like, so if we go to ball games, like we go to ball games with my son, I don't coach him from the bleachers. Like, I don't yell at him. Like, I yell at him. If I yell at my son, it's from his effort, like his effort or his behavior on the floor. That's what I yell at him for. And he's a 12-year-old. So you know how 12-year-old boys are.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. They're 12-year-old boys and preteen boys. So, and that's what I talked to my son about after the games is like, how hard you're working, number one. And I talk about, like all eyes are on you, and your behavior on the court and how hard you play. Like, I never get mad. Like, if he misses shots or he turns the ball, I tell him, like, we turn the ball over 20 sometimes a game in basketball. I can't stay mad about stuff like that. Like, but I try to take the approach that, I'm a parent too, and I get what you're saying. But I also try to apply it like in life. We don't all get the same opportunity. Like, there's times that we work our tails off and we work as hard as we can, and we don't get the results we want or what we're expected to get. And, it's tough sometimes. It's tough conversations to have. But I also want those parents to know, like, I love your child like this is like they're my own child. Like, when they come with me, like, I'm not doing anything to be wrong to your child. I'm not trying to wrong your child. Like, your child is as important to me if they play every minute and if they don't play every minute. And that's also something that, going back to a couple of other questions about excitement is, we celebrate everybody. Like, my favorite pictures, I tell kids all the time, like, my favorite pictures are when I get, and the things that we post on social media are of our kids on the bench cheering for each other. Like, I love a picture of my kids or our kids in our program standing up on the bench, clapping and cheering each other on. Like, those are just my favorite pictures.
I love that.
And at my old school, we had a culture wall. Well, here I tape them on their team room door. So they see them as they go in the door. And, they take pride in that. Like, we celebrate each other. Like, and then, I love it when our kids that get in the game late, they get in the game and our kids are over there cheering for them just as hard as those people were cheering for them.
That's
and
awesome.
that's, I think, that's something, that going back to the parent thing, that's what I want parents to understand is, like, your kid just means as much to me as, if they don't play or if they play every minute, everybody's the same to me. Like, they're all out there making the same sacrifices every day.
Love it. No, that's great. And I think that once parents know that, like, their kid is going to be taken care of and their player is going to be taken care of, not just as a player, but also be built up as a human being, I think that that's just the best way to work with parents and have them on your side. Once they know that they can trust you, especially when you think about, and I think for coaches, I know I forget about this sometimes, it's just how much time we kind of ask these mothers and fathers to kind of give up their sons or daughters to us. When you think about it, it is quite a lot, and that trust needs to be there.
Absolutely, 100%.
Coach, to wrap up, there's a couple questions I ask every guest, so go ahead and start here with this first one. When you think back to your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Man, I'll tell you, I've had a few, and I'll share a couple instances if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
One of the first one that comes to mind, I talk about the job I had at George with versus where I'm at now, and I go back and, like, somebody asked me this in a podcast before. if there's anything I'd change, and I would probably go back and I would apologize to those kids for my first job because I was young. I thought it was all about winning and proving like what I knew. And just all the things that the young coaches can typically, and I'm not saying just young coaches, it's all coaches in general. They can, you get lost in trying to prove that you can coach, and you get lost in the fact that it's relationship based and build relationships with those kids. Um, you know, I completely changed after after that job was over. I went to Pulaski and was there for a year and worked under a really great guy, Buddy Ferris, an absolutely outstanding man, very religious man. I learned a lot from just being an assistant with him. And it kind of changed my thought process. And in my first 2 years at Pulaski, I was kind of into some different thought processes. And then I started reading more, started reading a lot of leadership books and how to lead. I came from, we all grew up from the old school getting, you got yelled at. Like I grew up from coaches, we all grew up in that hard, tough love coaching mentality. And that doesn't work with kids nowadays. Sometimes the positive things that a coach says to a kid may be all that they get that's positive for them. So it's embracing that and understanding that you've got to build relationships. You've got to be able to say I'm wrong. You've got to be humble. I like I said, I don't use I a lot. I don't use my. I don't use me when I talk about our program because it's not about me. It's about our kids, and it's about the kids that sacrifice and the parents that sacrifice to make our kids a part of our program. Is something that you learn from. And I guess the second thing I'm going to talk about is, don't, it's okay to love what you do as a coach. I love what I do as a coach, but I also have a family, and I'm not going to slight my family anymore. So a funny story I'll tell that kind of I learned from, basketball is a game and life is life was the year we were runner up at Pulaski. It was a crazy last 3 games of the year.
Yeah.
So we played at Woodgrove High School, which is about 4.5-5 hours from us. So we had to drive up there that day on a bus and play. Well, we upset them. They were like one of the better. We played Loudon Valley, which was like one of the better teams in the state. They were loaded, all senior guards. They were senior heavy, had some studs, and we beat them with a bunch of freshmen, sophomores, a bunch of non-experienced kids. So we come back, and I had to be in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is about 3 hours from here. And I got home at like 2:30 in the morning. I had to be back up in Tennessee at 8 o'clock for my son to play basketball. While we were out there, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can. While we're out there, my youngest gets sick. So he gets sick on Sunday.
Yeah.
On top of us being exhausted from being in Winchester and then coming back and then having to go, another 3 hours out into Tennessee. So he gets sick on Sunday. So my wife has to leave and come home. And I have to get my mom has to come pick me and my oldest son up after the tournament's over in Tennessee, which is 3 hours, as I said. So we come home, we go practice on Monday for our state semifinal game, which was against a district, or not a district rival, a rival, like our neighboring county, which is Carroll County High School, another phenomenal program, girls program in our state. So we have to play them on Tuesday in the state semis at their place. Well, pretty much their place, the high school over there that was packed. When we walked in the gym at 5:30 or 5 o'clock for a 6 o'clock tip off, their fans were already packing the gym. So it was, anyways, at like 1 o'clock that day, my wife calls me and she says, "Hey, they're putting Carter in the emergency room, or they're putting Carter in the hospital." So my youngest son's in the hospital, and my first words to her were, "Well, do I need to come?" And then, that's, as a younger coach, that was not even something I would have thought of at the time. That was how selfish I was. But this time I was like, do I need to be there? And she was like, no. She was like, "It'll be fine. I'm fine." So our coach, we ended up coming out and had an amazing game, punched our ticket to the state championship from there. And I I spend the day before the state championship game in the hospital with my youngest son. Um, and he's in the hospital like he had flu and strep. I mean, it was
Oh
bad. Like they
man.
had to give him fluids because he wasn't feeling like he had already been so sick he'd lost so much fluids they had to put him in the hospital. So then I spend the whole day before trying to plan practice, trying to plan a trip to Richmond, which is 4 or 5 hour ride for us. Just the whole day. My wife was ready to choke me because I was in a hospital working the whole time, and rightfully so. So we go to the state championship game, and I take my oldest son with me. My middle and my youngest and my wife don't get to make the trip, and that was tough for me because I know how much they wanted to be there, and I know how much I wanted them there, and it was just unfortunate. And it really opened my eyes on, like, as important as my job is as a coach, my job as a dad is a lot more important, and my family deserves as much time because they get robbed of a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I guess, a lesson that I learned was, don't it, don't sacrifice your own family and what they mean to you, for your success at your job. If I guess is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Like you said, right? Basketball is basketball, but life is life. I think that's a really, really good
Yeah.
way to put it for sure. You don't just you don't get that time back with family and
No.
ones. Yeah, that never comes back. And I think that a lot of people I've spoken to are parents. It's kind of one of those situations where they have a kid and then they blink and all of a sudden they're 18 or something and they're out of the
Yep.
house. So,
I, I got like I said, I got a 12-year-old who's getting ready to come to the high school next year. We can go to work with me every day.
wow,
Like
where'd the time go,
I
huh?
look back, exactly right. I look back and I'm like, where did the time go? Like it's gone. And he's getting ready to be in high school. He's going to be an eighth grader next year, and then in another year, he's a ninth grader. I was like, it's crazy, and unfortunately, that's the part that a lot of people don't understand about our profession is a lot of coaches are leaving the profession
Yeah.
because of that. On top of the scrutiny and all that, but they're leaving the profession because COVID. That was a lot of the reason why I left my old job to come here. I didn't realize how much time I was missing, working 30 minutes away, and how much time I was missing from them. And it really opened my eyes throughout COVID how much I was home with them, and that bond I got to create with them, and it's just been really important to me ever since then that I don't take that for granted.
Yeah, no, I love that. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox, kind of your platform to kind of get out a final message, a closing thought, just something that you just kind of want to leave the listeners with. And I'll kind of let you take that in any direction you want. And if you go over 60 seconds, that's perfectly fine as well. So I'm going to kind of let you take it from here, and the floor is kind of yours, Coach. Go for it.
I appreciate it, and I thought about this question ever since you sent me the breakdown. Was I guess my soapbox would be, as a coach, love those kids like they're your own. Um, the more you love them like they're your own, and you let them understand that they are important to you, the more they're going to embrace you and what you're trying to teach them, and the more they're going to take that with them when they leave you. I tell our kids all the time, my success is not judged by our wins and losses right now. My success is judged by what you do when you become college students, or what you do when you become part of the working force, or what you do when you become parents, or how you approach life from here on out. Like, love those kids and let them know that you love them. Like, I tell our kids all the time I love them, and it's genuine. Like, and I want them to understand it's genuine because, as we already said in this, those kids make sacrifices. They make sacrifices when they could be at home doing nothing. They could be at home, on their phones and everything, but they choose to come out there and be a part of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build and what you're trying to create. So make those kids feel appreciated, make them feel loved, and the repayal you get for 5 to 10 years down the road will be more important than what you get at the immediate.
Awesome. That was really well said. Coach, I want to thank you so much for spending some time talking to us, especially on a game day for you guys today. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you talking about your program, talk about what it means to be successful on and off the court in a small school environment. Really awesome to kind of hear the great things that you guys got going on with your culture and success that you guys are finding and have found both on the court and off the court. So thank you so much. Best of luck going forward. And hey, best of luck today, Coach. Go get them.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Coach.
Thank you guys for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.